All right, time to take a look at the Welding Practice Kit Deer Head. Oh, that's interesting. So they actually got this thing well wrapped up. So we got our instructions. So we're going to have a bunch of plates. They're going to look like this, and this is going to tell us exactly how that has to go together. So I like seeing that, and it's in full color, which is nice. And there we go. I like that they put these little plastic caps on there so we don't have to worry about it damaging anything during shipment. And here are the plates. So you can actually see that they got them so that they are kind of pinched together. So you can just take that plate and we can bend it into the shape that we want, and will already be attached, so we don't even have to tack weld it. Basically, whatever welds we're going to be putting on here is going to be the final structure of the product. Now, there isn't any number on this plate, so we just kind of match it up, but it's not really a big deal. It looks like this one is a 15 or an 11, depending on which way that you rotate it. So we got two of those. It looks like everything is already kind of paired up. There's basically just two plates of each, and they are already laid on top of each other. So that's actually going to make organizing this thing much easier. Okay, so there it is. So we've got just a whole bunch of different plates. So we just got to bend it into shape, get it stuffed together, and then start welding. You can actually see through those plate lines, so those are cut all the way through everywhere except for those tack points. Whatever this is, I don't know that that's rust. I don't think it is. I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be stainless steel. Well, it's got a little muck on there, not really a big deal. So this is not 1/8 inch thick. This is going to be a little bit thinner, which means that you got to be a little bit more careful about burning through it. That's going to be part of the fun with this, is that you got to really know what you're doing if you're going to actually make this thing happen right and make it look good. Now, if we wanted to, we could just bend this into the shape that we want, and we could lay it right on the table, and we could weld it like that. That would make it a lot easier, but the real challenge is going to be, can you do vertical welds as well as overhead welds whenever you're going to be doing things like underneath the jaw and that kind of thing. Really up to you how much of a challenge you want to do, but that is kind of what makes this thing cool, is that you can make this as challenging as you really want to. So this is 0.437, so this is a little bit thinner than the other steel we were using. This is also stainless steel. See, I got a nice strong magnet here. It does not stick. So I can't rely on that to hold the piece for me. It's going to make it a little bit more challenging, but we can make this work. So following the instructions, we need the base plate, and then we need parts 2 and 3. One is going to wrap around like this, and the other is going to wrap around like that. I don't see any difference in the seam, so I'm just going to assume that you can do whichever one you want. As always, first thing is make sure we clean up the metal. So I was trying to figure out if it was going to sit around the base or if it was going to sit on top of the base, and I think that it's designed to sit on top of the base. Okay, so we're tacked up, and you can kind of see here on the back, when I was starting out I was at 35 amps, so I ended up kicking that down to 25 amps. Make that 24 amps. So that part is ready to weld. Not sure if I want to assemble the whole thing and tack it up and then just weld the whole thing, or if I want to tack it up in parts and then tack it together. We'll find out. This is where having a good start really makes a difference, because if your lines aren't straight on the base, then they're not going to be straight anywhere else, and it's just going to cascade into madness. So here's what I got so far. So I'm going to save this point until I got the antlers started, so I can kind of use that to straighten everything out. And I did have to use a little bit of fill rod right here because I burned a hole there, but I needed that tack, so we are coming together. So there is the nose. So there is an antler base. So I got it tacked on the back, but as I'm trying to go onto the front, the more that I'm trying, the worse it's getting. So this is going to be one, I think I'm going to stop right there, try to put on some other pieces and maybe fill that in, because that is definitely giving me a challenge. So in working on the other antler, when I was trying to bend the metal down, it was snapping off. Little bending points were enough to hold it in place. So I ended up having to put those back together and retack them. Just having a lot more with burning through. If you're looking for something easy, but that will look cool when you're done, this is probably not the right choice, but if you're looking for a challenge, this is definitely going to be the right choice. Okay, so I came back and I got some .040 filler wire, and I was able to fill in some of those gaps. So all I got left right now is just the horns. I got to attach the rest of the horns onto here. But I was thinking about it, and it seemed to me that if I attach those horns on right now, I'm going to lose a lot of the mobility for actually getting some of these welds put down. So I started doing a little bit of welding just to see how it would be. And of course, I started on the back. And the welding actually is not as hard as I was expecting it to be. For this one, I literally just put that .040 filler wire on there and then just ran it over. I'm not sure if there's going to be a better way to do that. Of course, everybody wants to stack dimes, but with this thin stuff, I get the impression that I would probably just be blowing holes in it, like you can see right here. I was blowing holes all over this thing, but it is coming together, and it's actually looking pretty darn cool. I'm using a number 12 cup right now with about 30 CFH. So I was playing with the amps on this one. You can see I started out at about 24. I tried to pick it up to about 28, and you can see it got real messy, and then I burned a hole in the top. So 24 is definitely the sweet spot. So I'm kind of bouncing around. You can see I had some serious problems on that one. So it seems like where the bends are, sometimes they're a little bit further apart, sometimes they're closer. So obviously when they're closer, it's a lot easier. But bouncing around helps to also make sure that the metal stays cool. You don't want it to get too hot wherever the heck you're working on. So I'm just doing like a little bit here, a little bit there. But overall, I think it's turned out pretty well. And you can see I kind of gave up on welding all the way to the tips just because of stuff like that, where it basically takes the tip and any amount of heat will just melt that thing right through. For my skill level, I'll just end up needing to do a lot of fill work like what I got right here, and it does not look pretty. It's just nice having something that you're putting together that actually will make something instead of just like welding coupons together. So if the word frustrating had a face, it would be this guy. That's kind of interesting because when I started this project, I was expecting to, get something that I could put together that'd be all nice, colorful, and very cool looking, and then just show it off to everybody. But it turned out this was much harder than I was expecting. Mostly just to do with the thinness of the metal. Like, I was burning holes all over the place, and sometimes when they started burning through, getting those filled in was even more difficult because I had to put more heat on it to get the filler rod in, but then by the time that touched the metal, it already melted away. Pretty much everywhere where there's an end, I just kind of left it just because it was burning straight through it and there wasn't anything I could do. Any amount of heat that I could put on that would be enough to actually make a weld would just make that end fall off. So I gave up on that. But the cool thing about this is I ended up learning a lot about where my weak sides are. Of course, working with thin metal was a big thing. Figuring out how to fill. There's a few spots on here, especially like right here, where I ended up having to put in quite a bit of filler rod. And yeah, I ended up actually enjoying it just because I learned so much just by putting this thing together. This was definitely not an easy thing. If you're a beginner, I don't think I would start with this thing. I would start with something a little bit simpler. If you're an intermediate and you really want to enhance your skills, this deer head will teach you a lot. I would go so far as to call this a legitimate challenge. So yeah, I enjoyed it. That's very cool. I think people walking up to it are going to look at it and be like, well, that's terrible. But the reality is anybody that actually knows, they're going to know this is not an easy thing to put together. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was very cool, and I hope the Sonnler comes out with more stuff like this, because I'd like to try putting more stuff like this together.